We just got our first look at the newest cards from Scarlet and Violet, an upcoming set for the Pokemon TCG. And I gotta say, I think myself and a lot of people are a little disappointed. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be talking about what I think one of the biggest problems with the newest cards that we've seen from Scarlet and Violet are, and what we thought we were going to get, what we actually got, and why it might not actually be the problem some of us are making it sound like. But before we get into it, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff tells YouTube this is a good channel, and other people should watch it. Now, what is Scarlet and Violet? Well, I mean, it's an upcoming set for the TCG. I think most people probably know that. TCG expansions follow very closely to the video game. So in the video game that just came out, which, by the way, great game, absolutely love it, there's a new mechanic or gimmick, and it's called terastallization. I'm going to show some gameplay footage, it's a trailer from the game, and you get to see that Pokemon change their type. In the video going on, Sudowoodo, normally a rock type, is changing into a grass type. And only one Pokemon can change their type per battle, so cool. So I think a lot of us had thought that Pokemon were going to give us either an energy card or a tool card that let us change the Pokemon's type to whatever the card said. However, there's also a possibility we got something what's called Delta Species, where they're just, the cards are already printed. You can't turn anything into anything. We'll go over to Pokegear and I'll show an example. So I think a lot of people were expecting this, where Pokemon are different types. Dragonite is not an electric type. It just never is. But the Delta Species, you can see it says Delta Species on the top here. And now that tells us that this is a different Dragonite. It's an electric type. They don't always have to change types in the TCG. Sandslash will always be a fighting type because the TCG groups ground, rock, and fighting into one type. But you can see it says that it gains both the fighting and metal typing, and so does the Dragonite. And this Tyranitar, which is never a fire type, now also has fire and metal as its typings. So kind of interesting. So I think that's what we were kind of hoping for, is Pokemon with different types. You can see that this Tyranitar still retains a grass weakness, even though it's a fire type, because its normal type is rock dark. Fire isn't weak to grass, but Tyranitar's still weak to grass for some reason. I don't know. It's interesting. You can build some really cool decks. You can use a Pokemon like Tyranitar in a fire type deck, which you would normally not be able to do. You can pair the Sandslash now with some metal types if you want. It allows for a little bit of creativity in deck building. So I think this is what a lot of people expected. But what do we end up getting? Well, we got this. And this, I'll be very clear, this is the first Terastal card we've seen, so who knows, but at the moment, we have this Arcanine X, and you can see up under the name, it has this extra text. That is the Terastal effect, Terastal trait, whatever it's going to end up being called, and in this case, it says that it can't be damaged by attacks while on the bench, so it has a bench barrier. Cool, I guess. My problem is that two things. One, it is very lazy and unimaginative. It's not creative. And two, it doesn't actually solve a problem. You might be thinking, Nick, but if our Terastal Pokemon can't be damaged by bench, like on the bench by Snipe, then we don't have to run Manaphy anymore, which has the bench barrier ability. Except that's not really true, because you're probably not only going to be running Arcanine X or whatever Pokemon has the Terastal effect, prevent damage while on the bench. You have to evolve this from, say, Growlithe. This Growlithe doesn't have bench protection, so if bench sniping is a problem, Kyogre, Raikou, Jolteon, Urshifu, whatever, you have to be able to protect your Growlithe and your Pokemon while they're evolving. Otherwise, they're just going to get KO'd, and then it doesn't matter what effect the Terastal has if you can never evolve into it. So you still need the Manaphy. And if Bench Snipe isn't a problem, well then the effect on this Arcanine, the Terastal effect, is useless. So they're not really solving any problem by giving this one particular Pokemon Bench Snipe protection. And that's kind of what I don't like. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't even do something new. It just doesn't do anything interesting or helpful in any real way. I mean, I guess if all your Pokemon can't be sniped while on the bench, then sure, your mana if it gets knocked out, it doesn't matter, but I don't know. It's pretty easy to knock out a Manaphy right now, and you still don't see a ton of bench snipe. So I don't really know what they're. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they're gonna give us something with crazy bench snipe, and it's like you're gonna want these effects, and that's a very real possibility. It is. Now, what this is similar to is what's called origin or origin traits, and we've seen that from older sets. You can see here we have a few different Pokemon. These are all from the set Ancient Origins, and in that entire set, there were 2 origin traits. The first one, prevent all effects of your opponent's abilities done to this Pokemon. That exists on this ball toy. And then the second was, you may have up to 2 tools attached to this Pokemon. That's it. Those are the only 2 origin traits in that entire set. Now, other sets did give us different ones, but in that very first set, we only got 2. So it's possible that we'll get 2 different terrestrial effects. It's possible that we get 1, we get 3. Again, we really don't know. I'm just really, really hoping that we have more than 1 and that they are better, or that at the very least they get better over the course of time. And I'm sure they will, right? If you and this is why I'm not super worried. They will likely get better, because if you look at V-Stars and V-Maxes now compared to the ones you see on screen that we got in Sword and Shield base, the ones we have now are miles better than what we had previously. By like today's standards, Snorlax and Lapras are not very good, and those were like the better ones at the time. So, you know, to sit there and say that Arcanine is very bad, so I'm not excited for Scarlet and Violet, it's gonna be really bad, it's gonna be really boring. We truly don't know. Future sets will likely give us better Pokemon, better attacks, different and better effects from Terastals. And what I can only hope happens is that, again, we get different Terastal effects. Maybe we have Terastal Pokemon that have different types. Maybe that there's a Hitmonchan X that's a Psychic type. I don't know. Maybe we get, just prevent all status conditions, prevent effects from abilities. Like, we get some different Terastal effects. That's kind of the hope. I would love to see those 2 things. If nothing else, give us different types so we can throw these Pokemon in crazy deck builds. Give us, more Terastal effects. And what I also think is interesting is if you look at the Ancient Origins set, there are these origin traits, whatever they're called, on all different levels of Pokemon. You have one on a basic ball toy, one on a stage 1, you got one on a Mega Pokemon. So I would be super fascinating if, for example, this, the Smoliv got a Terastal Smoliv that was, had a bench barrier, not affected by abilities, can't discard energies from it. It's a water type. I don't know. I want them to do something different. What we have right now with just this Arcanine, and like I said, I do not think it will stay this way, but on the off chance it does, or if in the near future, if this is all we have, is going to be very boring, it's going to be very underplayed. And again, we saw this with Sword and Shield base set. Tag teams were still played until they rotated. Until the time you could not play tag teams at all anymore, they were still played and still doing really, really well. Pikarom and Mewtwo, Mew GX, they were very popular decks, and even Reshizard was still popular towards the end. So don't be surprised if X's come out and we're not all suddenly running around playing these 1-prizer decks that evolve into 2-prize X's, and the game's going to be saved. There's going to be a transition period, right? I can't even say about the game being saved or not. I only know V's and V-Stars and V-Maxes. I started playing well into Sword and Shield block, so I never played with X's. I never played with Delta Species and Origin traits, so this is all new to me, but I still don't think it's particularly interesting, and I think that is part of the problem. I'm a, relatively speaking, new player, and I don't find that good, or I guess interesting is the right word. I don't find a fire type Arcanine that can't be hit while it's on the bench particularly interesting, because we have fire type Arcanines and we have cards that can't let it get a hit while it's on the bench. Obviously there are a bunch of other X's. You can scroll down and stuff, and you know, they're there. You want to read them. I have a link to Pokegear and Pokebeast where these cards are. You can go read them. There are plenty of other videos that talk about what they do and first thoughts and impressions. Honestly, I don't think anyone can have a particularly good first impression of these cards, because while if we look at the Sword and Shield V's and V Maxes, they might not be very good. Zacian's the exception, right? Zacian's the exception, is very, very good. But for the most part, maybe we'll get a really good Pokemon X. I don't know. But for the most part, they're not, conventionally good. But we did get a lot of support and staple cards. Quick Ball, Evolution Incense, Marnie, Research. Like, there's a bunch of cards in those very early Sword and Shield sets that are still heavily used today. So we might get those kind of staple cards in Scarlet and Violet base set, even if the Pokemon X and terrestrial Pokemon aren't the most interesting at first. We will grow into it most likely. So overall, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up. All this to say, I do think what we've seen so far is boring. I don't think it's very good, and I'm optimistic that what we will get in the future is better. But I just want to put out that, kind of like, don't be super dismayed by what we've seen so far. We've seen a total of one terrestrial card. It's not the end of the world. They'll get better, likely. And if they don't, I will eat my words. I will be the first one to come out and say, I was wrong. They are awful. This sucks. I'd much rather be playing with V's and V Maxes, even if they are 3 prizes. I'd rather play with those because they were good, they were fun, they had cool effects and abilities and attacks. And these EXs are just generic, boring. Even the art, it's, going back. Some people like that, right? Some people like that it's nostalgia for them because, it's very similar art style to original X's. For me, it's new because I never played with them, so I don't really care too much. I do like, I don't know if I like V art better. I think I do. But hopefully, maybe we'll get some really cool full art X's. That would be really sick. But again, all of it is way, way too early to tell. We'll have a better idea of first thoughts and impressions when we get more of the set revealed. And then, honestly, we're really not going to know until we get our hands on them and start actually playing them in the meta. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks so much for watching. And I hope that maybe that you aren't so doom and gloom on Scarlet and Violet as a set. That's kind of my goal with this. Even though I am initially disappointed, I am remaining optimistic because I think there's still just a lot of really cool stuff for them to show. So there, I said everything I had to say. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found it informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you think of the newly revealed Scarlet and Violet cards. What do you want to see? What were you expecting? What are you hoping for? Are you happy with what you've seen? I want to hear from you. So thanks so much, and I will see you next time.